Lars, the ambassador of Uruguay here in Germany gave me last week a guide of Uruguay, and I am absolutely surprised on the details and how deep this 300 pages are describing my country. Could you explain us how did you manage to do this?
Sure. It's a work. It was a project that basically works on different levels. I basically started out. Well, actually, I started out in Buenos Aires, working for a radio station there, and everybody said you have to go to Uruguay and you have to get to know the beaches of Uruguay, and that's how I went there first. And I went from Buenos Aires to Colonia, from there to Montevideo, and I saw all the beaches. And then, since before I started my work as a journalist, I was studying area studies of Latin America here in Germany, in Cologne, in the University of Cologne, and the editorial Reise know-how. They were looking just a bit more than a year ago. They were looking for somebody writing a travel guide on Uruguay, and they found me because on my website it says that I'm a professional on Latin American studies. So they asked if I was interested, and once I said yes, I started to do my research, talking to people from Uruguay, friends from Uruguay, of course also friends from Buenos Aires, and then I did lots of research, basically a month or almost 2 months. I did my research on all the hotspots in Uruguay. After that, I went to travel the entire country by car. I went to all the places that you find in the book, and actually a few more. And that was throughout an entire month. And after I came back, I spent another half year doing a bit more research, but mainly writing the book.
Lars, I'm surprised that there are certain details, like, for instance, taking only an example, how do you manage to know how is the good traveling for women alone?
Yeah, I mean, let's face it, the book, is a result not only of my own work, it's also a result of talking to very many people in Uruguay and also talking to very many other travelers I met. And I was very, very lucky because when I got to Uruguay, I got to stay with a friend of mine or the father of friends of mine. And instead of only staying for one night, as I had actually planned, in the end I stayed for an entire week and talking to him. Yeah, I learned a lot, not only about Montevideo, but also about the entire country, about the history, about the economy, about everything. And after that, traveling the entire country, spending my nights at different hotels and hostels and estancias, I got to meet people from the entire world, also women traveling alone, or who had traveled alone in the beginning and then just hooked up with other people. And they told me about what it was like. I mean, I also talked to the police in Montevideo, for example, or I had fantastic support by the Ministry of Tourism in Montevideo, and before by the embassy, by the Uruguayan embassy here in Berlin. And they all provided me with all kinds of information, which enabled me to put all these details into the book.
Yes, I'm surprised of things that I was living so many years in Uruguay I didn't even know. But let me ask you, Lars, what is this country appealing for European tourists? What do we have to offer?
It might sound funny, but what you have to offer, apart from all the wonderful beaches, from the interior, apart from the horses and the fantastic meat and the incredible wines and all the good food and everything else, what you have got is some kind of slow motion, that might be even boring for people who live in Uruguay, but which is fantastic for people who come to spend a few weeks on vacation and who want airport in Carrasco and leaving the airport by car. So for the first time I was driving a car in Uruguay. At first I thought, oh my God, this is going to be so difficult. I don't know the streets. I don't really know into which direction I have to go. And then there will be so many streets and so on. But instead of that, what I found was just something quiet, something very slow. I was on the highway, and instead of many other cars, I saw cows on the highway. I saw horses. There was on the Ruta Uno between Montevideo and Luña, and I just thought, yeah, this is what I want. Yeah, this is what I need. I just want to enjoy where I am. I want to be able to see what is all around me, and this is what I got already. Yeah, as stupid as it might sound for somebody who lives in Uruguay, this is what I got already when I left the airport.
So, for a European journalist, what makes the difference with Europe? What do you live in Europe to make this so appealing?
I mean, the lifestyle in Europe is definitely much faster. It is, and people by far are not as friendly in Europe as they are in Uruguay. I mean, I live in Berlin, but Berlin is a very harsh city. But also in other parts of Germany or other parts of Europe, people are not as helpful, as solidaric with each other. And that is something I found in Uruguay, and I know it a little bit from my times in Buenos Aires.
Lars, why don't you tell me a couple of anecdotes that makes us understand if the feeling you got in contact with Uruguayan people?
Very beautiful anecdote I've got. I went to Rivera because I was really interested to just put my foot onto the Plaza Internacional, which basically marks the border of two countries, namely Uruguay and Brazil. And entering the city by car, at first I couldn't really find the square, so I asked people who were next to me walking on the sidewalk, and I just stopped my car and the window, and just talking through the window, I asked them, "Oh, can you tell me how to find that square?" And they just said, "If you don't mind, we'll sit with you in the car. We'll show you where the square is." That is one example of how helpful I found people in Uruguay. Another thing is I went to an estancia which is very close to 33. Very close to Quebrada de los Cuervos, and the owner, it's two brothers basically, the owner of this estancia, he traveled the world. He lived in Spain, his brother lived in the United States, he lived in Spain. At a certain point they decided to open an estancia turística in Uruguay, and instead of only looking out to make their own business, to earn their own money, they try to give as much work to the people who live around them. Yeah, the gaucho who works for them in their fields. Yeah, they told him, listen, if you want to make extra money with the tourists, we'll always send the tourists who stay at our estancia, so they can spend time with you. You can take them around. You can show them the Quebrada de los Cuervos in your own horses. They don't even ask for some kind of a fee for that. They just do this because they want to support the environment. They want to support the people around them. Same story with a lady who lives exactly with her family in the Quebrada de los Cuervos. She basically has a tiny house, but she cooks fantastic comida criolla. And so these brothers call her and say, listen, we've got tourists from, in my case, from Germany. Here's this guy from Berlin writing the travel guide. Why don't you cook for him? Yeah, and then they sent me there. And so me being the German guy, the German fellow, I had a chance to eat real comida criolla in the Quebrada de los Cuervos, which for me was just fantastic. Or a different story, I've got thousands of them, yeah, so you gotta make me stop. Different story is I was in Punta del Este, and after that I went to Punta Ballena. I stayed overnight in a hostel, which was interesting for my book because everything is handmade. Now, the guy who built the Matisha, he only used materials which he found somewhere. It's nothing new. The entire hostel is basically based on, how do you say that in English? Materiales reciclables. And I spent the entire night talking to him. He told me things about Uruguay, about the culture, about the history, about politics, which I would never have been able to read on the internet or in the newspaper or in any book. So apart from all the beauty in your country, it's really how special people are.
Lars, you said political. Can you tell me what's your impression of the political situation in a country that is ruled by a leftist party for the last 3 periods of presidency?
Openly speaking, I was very, very surprised because what I had known from years back was that Uruguay, the former so-called Switzerland of Latin America, was in ruins. And since I do know a bit about the economy in all kinds of countries all over the world, I had expected that Uruguay would need much, much longer to recover. But what I found when I really spent time there, and not just did some beach hopping, but when I really traveled throughout the entire country, was a country that had more than recovered. It's a country that has been going, I don't want to exaggerate, I'm just expressing what I saw and what I feel. It's a country that basically has gone through the roof, as we say in German, because I found some economy that is so stable, and with investments from all over the world, and with a standard of living. I know that the basic income is not very high. I'm totally aware of that, but still, the standard of living that I have found in Uruguay is something that I know from other European countries. The openness, the liberal system that I found in Uruguay, it's not only about the fact of the same-sex marriage, it's not only about the fact that women have the right to abort, it's not only about the fact that people, Uruguayans, can buy hemp legally in Uruguay in general. It's a liberal atmosphere, politically speaking, economically speaking, and also socially speaking, that I definitely didn't expect, and which surprised me every single day. And on top, I know many people in Uruguay say that the standard of education is going down the drain. I can't comment on that, but what I can say is that the standard of education is brilliant. Comparing it to countries like Germany, or I studied in Spain, I went to school, to high school in the US, the standard of education in Uruguay is really impressive. The talks I had with people of all kinds of ages, it doesn't matter if 80 years old or 18 years old or 40 years old, it always really, really fascinated me how well people are educated and what they know about the world.
Lars, obviously I'm getting in love of this country with your talking, so I truly invite you in your next trip to Uruguay to visit us. We have our radio program in Argentina, in Buenos Aires. De Fogón en Fogón is open, and I know you were working for La Tribu some years ago, so you know about radio.
Yes, that was basically my entrance to my job, to journalism. While I was studying in the 90s, I started to study area studies of Latin America in the 90s in Cologne in Germany, and one of the internships I did was in Buenos Aires with FM La Tribu, and that's where I started to work as a journalist. And I fondly, with all my heart, remember working there. I remember the people who I worked with, and my program was about the music during the time of the dictatorship, how the singer-songwriters like Leon Gieco or Charlie Garcia, how they had basically in their songs, how they told about what was going on in Argentina. And that was something that was so special to me and so dear to me. I also had a chance to meet several of the Madres de la Plaza de Mayo. I did interviews with them, like I did interviews with other people, and that's something that stayed with me until today. So I can't wait to meet you in Buenos Aires.
Lars Borchert, thank you very much, and hope to see you soon in South America.